If you are an independent filmmaker, solo content creator, or if you're someone who is working on a tight budget, chances are you've reached for your phone to get B-roll, or maybe something like DJI Osmo Pocket 3 or GoPro. When do you go for those cameras? How do you use them in conjunction with, let's say, a cinema camera, mirrorless, DSLR, something with higher dynamic range? And how do you get that to work? I've used a 24mm on the cinema camera to match the focal length as best as I could with the 26mm that's on the front of my phone and the 20 or 22 that's on the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. So this is for the sake of talking head, and we're also looking at skin tones in this. So this is the cinema camera. This is the Pocket 3, and this is the phone. On the phone, I'm using the Blackmagic camera app, which is free to use, and I highly recommend it. It gives you a little bit more control over your ISO and other settings. You can see on the cinema camera the background blur and how much 3D pop you get if that's what you're going for. There is background blur, if you notice, on both the iPhone and the Pocket 3. It's not as exaggerated. We're talking about two limitations between the cinema camera and the other two cameras, which is fixed focal length and also the fixed aperture. Just about any camera that you're shooting on has the option to attach filters to it. It's definitely recommended that you take advantage of these filters to get the best image. There are certainly scenarios where an ND or CPL are very helpful. One of the prime examples that I use the Pocket Cam, or especially the iPhone, for is doing B-roll for my talking head videos. It's not in the traditional sense of a product shoot. Obviously, you would bring in a lot of lights. In this case, I'm doing a shoot of a lens. I do it right here. This window brings in plenty of light. There are white buildings that reflect lots of light for me. Taking a look at the footage shot across the three platforms, here is the cinema camera. This is the Pocket 3, and this is the iPhone. Typically, why I lean towards the phone is the clarity. I want everything to be clear. I want the information on the front of that lens to be seen. There's a little bit too much of the focus fall off on the cinema camera. The easy fix to that is to bring in more lights, but it's for the convenience of just putting something here, taking a picture or video, B-roll of it. You probably use these cameras for establishing shots, landscape shots. So here's an example where I think the Pocket camera did better than the cinema camera. What is the difference between these two shots? With the Pocket Cam, I'm using a CPL filter. It's taken the reflection out of the water. There's more blue in the sky. With the cinema camera, I wasn't really preparing it for this video. I was testing out a vintage glass that I got. It's also a different time of day. Now, where you can really see the difference between the two is if you zoom in on the buildings, you can see more detail, more contrast with the cinema camera than you can against the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. It's really a matter of convenience. As long as you're balancing things properly in the camera, using the right filters, it'll work. So when it comes to anamorphic, I definitely prefer to use cinema anamorphic glass. It's going to give you a truer anamorphic look and everything about anamorphic that makes it anamorphic. When it comes to phone, these are two screw-on threads with the 17mm thread. Same with this, which is a magnetic adapter for the Pocket 3. I guess we could say this is also an evening, nighttime test of using these two cameras. The flare isn't that great. If you're going for the lens flare look, you can certainly add that in post. What I prefer about true anamorphic is not just the lens flare, but you're getting the squeeze factor, so you're able to get more in frame. This movie that I did, all the video footage was shot on the Blackmagic cinema camera with either the C-Ray 75 or 35 Saturn anamorphic lens. With the exception of one shot that I needed to get in the cemetery, this particular shot was done with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I had it attached to a stand, and I imitated the jib crane shot. I had unwritten permission from the owner of the cemetery to film there. I didn't have permission to block the road for it, so getting out the gigantic jib that I have and the camera and bringing in a couple of people to monitor the shot, it was just easier to take the Pocket 3, attach it to the end of the stick, and get the shot. I use my phone to scan newspaper articles, documents, pictures. So that's where the three of them came together on one project. So with the pros and cons, image quality is certainly going to lean towards the cinema camera with 10-bit color and different settings on the phones. It can work. Portability is going to lean more towards the Pocket 3 and the iPhone. Flexibility as far as interchangeable lenses and codecs go absolutely is going to lean towards the cinema camera. Workflow as far as file size would be the smaller of the two, the Pocket 3 or the cinema camera. Everyone has a phone in their pocket that records video, so that's where the phone has that advantage, and depending on what your budget is, it's endless. I realize that there are caveats such as, if you have the Sony or the Lumix camera, maybe you don't need to use these other cameras because they do well in low light, they have the stabilization, and they have autofocus. But it comes down to telling the right story and using the tools that you have access to. I'd love to hear your story and how you use these different cameras in conjunction with each other. Is it something you stay away from? Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Take care of yourself. Peace.